Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about two new Metroid titles that appear to have been leaked here. One being a totally brand new one, another being a remake. And so we're going to be diving into why we think these are actually happening, when they are coming, and what they are, especially the brand new one. If you thought Metroid was going to be taking a break, well, maybe not. And it's pretty exciting, so that's what we're diving into today. But before continuing here, let me just point out I am getting so close to 60,000 subscribers, so if you find yourself enjoying my videos and you haven't subscribed already, I would very much appreciate your subscription. So shoutouts to Necrofelipe from Universal Nintendo. This is what he shared. Important. Brazil's Ministry of Justice and Public Security leaks existence of Metroid Ravenous for the Nintendo Switch 2 via classification rating. Listing already deleted from the Brazilian system indicates 2026 as production year. So I don't think this actually means that a new 2D Metroid is coming out this year, but I do think this strongly hints that Nintendo has been putting together a new 2D Metroid title that is not that far off, and we'll dive more into that in a bit, but here's a little bit more from Necrofelipe. The analysis of Metroid Ravenous was conducted in Brazil based on an internet link provided by Nintendo of America. It was one chapter and about 41 minutes in duration for the provided material. It received a 12-year recommendation due to the presence of violence, weapons, blood, and death, which is pretty typical for Metroid here. So basically this is just explaining what was analyzed to provide this rating, because of course with games before they come out, they're going to be submitted for rating here. And the very fact that this was submitted for rating does suggest that the game is not that far off. It does not mean it's coming out this year, but it does suggest that they are getting pretty close if they are already submitting it for rating here. So I do think this is suggestive that this title could even be announced as soon as the next big Nintendo Direct, which many of us are expecting to happen in September, given the history of things, and could be positioned as a first half of 2027 release. Now, I'm not saying that it is actually what is going to happen, but I am saying that that is a legitimate plausibility here. What I'm left thinking, and this has kind of been my gut feeling for a while, that we will be getting a new 2D Metroid sometime in 2027. I don't want to make any promises or predictions as to when exactly it's coming, but if I had to place my bets, I do think we're getting a new 2D Metroid in 2027, and it looks like that new 2D Metroid has been leaked as Metroid Ravenous. And I'm going to be diving more into what this Metroid Ravenous could be later on to the video, because there's something else to talk about before we dive into the theories on what this new game is going to be about. And that's a Super Metroid Remake. Because here we have Andy Robinson responding to this recent report of Metroid Ravenous having been leaked. And here he says, "More than one of these are coming, I'm told. We eating, Metroid fans." And so this is extremely interesting because this is actually corroboration from Andy Robinson, the owner of BGC, one of the more credible video game news sites there are. So he's saying he's also hearing about another Metroid title, more than just Metroid Ravenous here. And what's really cool about this is that there have been rumors from multiple places of a Super Metroid Remake. And so here we have a little clip shared by Attack the Backlog where he had a little bit of a podcast with Nash Weedle, who has leaked many things in the past, has not gotten everything right, so let's keep that in mind, but has also gotten many things correct and has leaked many of these things before other leakers. Like I saw some people saying that Nash Weedle copies Nate the Hate. That's not true. Like in the case of the Ocarina of Time remake, in the case of Star Fox, he actually leaked and teased these things before Nate the Hate. In the case of Ocarina of Time remake, he was talking about this years in the past. And the Star Fox thing, it was just like a day before Nate the Hate's podcast, but point is, he's not stealing information from Nate the Hate. He has leaked things accurately. Not everything. Again, take it with a grain of salt, but he has. And so let's play the clip here. It's in Spanish, but there will be English subtitles.
No sé, pero hay huecos ahí para sacar un Metroid, ¿no? A finales de año, segunda mitad de año.
Pero, Nash, Nash, pero para enseñar, no para sacar. Anda, déjalo así.
So what's funny about this is that this is a clip from the podcast where Nash was talking about how he heard about a Metroid title that will be coming on the second half of this year. And so this is interesting because if you guys remember, we covered this idea of a Super Metroid remake coming Nash had actually said that a Super Metroid Remake would be coming, but then there was this interesting YouTube comment that was found on a Nintendo Forecast video that had talked about a lot of things that not only come from Nash Weedle, but also Nate the Hate's podcast, where he talked about the Ocarina of Time remake and other things. And in this information, there was also mention of a Super Metroid remake, but a pixel-based one. In other words, something that wouldn't be as intense, something not as ambitious as a brand new Metroid title. If you guys seen Metroid Dread, it has beautiful visuals for the Switch 1. A Super Metroid remake here would be something of a more simpler style, but it would be kind of like a holdover, a little bit of a teaser, something for this year that would still be fun and appreciated by many Metroid fans, but that new 2D Metroid would be not so far off. And so we go to another post from Nash Weedle, Metroid Ravenous. This is the information I have about the next Metroid that I've been sharing with you. In 2022, Mercury Steam, the developer of Metroid Dread and Samus Returns in conjunction with Nintendo, signed a new project. So they started working on the next Metroid title a year after Metroid Dread, after they saw the incredible success, it being the best-selling Metroid game to date. 2025, delay of the new Metroid 2D. So here he's saying that he heard that there were going to be some delays to the new Metroid title, which would be Metroid Dread. 2025, ultimatum and deadline of 2026. And so here it seems like Nash was suggesting that there was a big push to make sure there's a Metroid release in 2026, and here in 2026, rumors of Super Metroid. And so the implication here is that Nintendo wanted Mercury Steam to have this new 2D Metroid ready and available early on for Switch 2 lifecycle to follow up immediately after the release of Metroid Prime 4. And I think it's actually a really interesting implication here, because it suggests that Nintendo wants to really push Metroid here, keep it going, and build momentum with the property. Now, just for clarity, in case someone doesn't understand or missed it, we're talking about 2D Metroid here, right? Metroid Prime 4 is 3D Metroid, that just came out. We're talking about new 2D Metroid titles now. Retro Studios, if they are working on Metroid Prime 5, which I do believe they are, and also Nash Weedle has suggested that as well, by the way, would probably be a few years away from now. And so continuing Metroid with some 2D Metroid offerings in the meanwhile actually makes a lot of sense. And so I would like to go back to September 29, 2025, because Nash Weedle said something very interesting. Attention, 2025, a developer was behind schedule. That developer has received an extension from Nintendo, deadline 2026. No further delays will be tolerated. I'm sorry I can't be more precise, but I think you'll understand. I've made reference to the fact that this was happening at some point, and so going back here, Nash points out this is more relevant than ever, and we just got word of this Metroid Ravenous title, and also we're hearing about Andy Robinson saying he's also heard about something Metroid related, and we're hearing this explanation from Nash about the Metroid situation. There's still a lot more to be said here, but here is a brief message from today's sponsor. Do you find yourself feeling tired, unable to take a good nap during the day from wherever you may be? Then perhaps you are in need of a soft, comfortable sleep mask that blocks out all light. Fortunately, Mad2 Sleep, the sponsor for today's video, has just that, a quality sleep mask. This sleep mask has super soft, comfy cushions that cover your eyes and block out all light. It's easy to adjust to different sizes, and it feels great to wear, and it's helped me personally fit in just a bit more rest during my days. And signing up now might just be the perfect time to enjoy the summer night sale between June 19th through July 15th to save up to 20% off. So if you're looking to improve your sleep and energy, check out the Mad2 Sleep mask using the link in the description below with my code SLEEPRESTART. The overall implication here is this: a Super Metroid Remake is going to be releasing this year. It's not going to be like a super ambitious remake, a pixel-based one, which would still be really cool. Maybe that's like Shadow dropped in August or something like that, where Nintendo doesn't have any releases currently slated. And then in 2027, we see the brand new Metroid Ravenous. That's what I believe is the implication of all of this. Which would mean, yes, as Andy Robinson said, us Metroid fans are going to be eating good here. Now, please keep in mind, we don't know with 100% certainty if this Super Metroid Remake thing is actually happening and it's going to be coming this year. All we know with complete certainty is that there was a attempted rating for a title called Metroid Ravenous, submitted by Nintendo of America. This is legitimate official information that has been taken down. This is a legitimate leak, but it's supporting a lot of the rest of the information. There's been a lot of corroboration, so it does leave me thinking with some pretty good confidence. Again, that does not mean with certainty, but with some confidence that we could be seeing multiple 2D Metroid titles announced within the next couple years here. Perhaps one this year, one next year. That's the hope, that's the optimism, and that's very exciting. But we are not done here. Let's hone in on Metroid Ravenous. A Super Metroid Remake, that's great, that's probably going to be one-to-one, nothing super crazy, but still really cool to see. Metroid Ravenous would be a new 2D Metroid title. Notice how they say Metroid and not Metroid Prime. For those that get confused by that, that's how you know. If it says Metroid Prime, expect a first-person, fully 3D explorable Metroid game. If you see just Metroid, that is the side-scrolling Metroid games. But with that established, the implication of the subtitle Ravenous I find extremely interesting. One, this tells us that this isn't a remake, but a brand new title, likely a direct follow-up to Metroid Dread, so we would be talking about Metroid 6 here. Metroid Dread was Metroid 5. Again, don't confuse these with the Metroid Prime titles, they are separate in terms of numbering here. But the main point being here, this would be a follow-up to the Metroid Dread story, and so for those who didn't finish Metroid Dread, I'm going to give you an opportunity to step off now if you don't want to get spoiled on the ending, but the ending of Metroid Dread, while also considering this title, does have some massive implications, so I'll give you 5 seconds here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so with Dread, the title there was suggestive of that feeling of dread, where Samus is being chased by the Emmy and she doesn't quite know who the threat is. But also, her Metroid DNA is activating and turning her into this ultra-powered Super Metroid. Pun not intended there. And so by the end of Metroid Dread, she's extremely powerful, she has a monstrous form, and she's absorbing life and energy from other creatures and beings around her, very much like a Metroid, because that is what she has become. She is the last Metroid because she has Metroid DNA infused into her, and that has taken her over. Like, she's still in control, but clearly she has changed dramatically because of this. She has significant new Metroid powers. Now, at the very end, we see that Quiet Robe, even though he was consumed by an X-Parasite, seems to have some level of control left and uses his Chozo powers to save Samus a bit and return her to what appears to be kind of like normal. So we don't quite know exactly what happens with Samus afterwards, but considering the subtitle of Ravenous and what Samus has become, this ultra super powered last remaining Metroid in the universe, and how Metroids are ravenous creatures, they are trying to suck the life out of things, they may be building upon this concept with Samus having to wrestle with her Metroid powers, trying to contain it or control it even better. Perhaps the powers will continue to develop and mature and become even crazier and stronger than what they were in Dread. And considering that this would be a Switch 2 exclusive title, they likely will be able to show off some pretty spectacular visuals here to really showcase some impressive things. Perhaps we could even be looking at some really insane mechanics as well that might be kind of hard to pull off with fast, fluid, 60 FPS visuals, maybe even 120 FPS visuals at a higher resolution with a lot going on in the environments. But thanks to the power of Switch 2, something like that could be very plausible, and so we could be looking at some pretty intense, fast-paced mechanics here, where we're seeing a significant evolution in Metroid gameplay, and the interesting pun here is that when I say Metroid gameplay, I don't mean just the title of the series, but Samus literally using Metroid powers on a greater scale. You see, something interesting about Metroid Dread, while the powers were developing, we saw Samus use them, we didn't really have control of them as the player. And so building a new Metroid title, expanding upon this concept, showing the development of Samus, and us being able to actually utilize these Metroid powers in gameplay is a really fun, interesting concept, and I think kind of makes sense as a proper continuation of Metroid Dread. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Ravenous also has multiple meanings here, maybe not just Samus, but something else, a threat that is ravenous. Perhaps the X-Parasites have not been totally eliminated, they are also ravenous as well. And so it's going to be interesting to see what they mean by that. Maybe they're referring to the Federation. Perhaps there are going to be issues with the Galactic Federation and how ravenous they are for power and control. I think something that perhaps some people underestimate about the Metroid series is that the Metroid series actually can go pretty in depth when it comes to the story. Perhaps it's not always in the forefront of things, especially the Metroid Prime titles, because there's a lot of details that you can just kind of scan. But with the 2D Metroid titles, the stories being written by Yoshio Sakamoto, who is known as a pretty good writer, I think it's actually a pretty reasonable expectation to think we're going to be getting a pretty in-depth and interesting story with the upcoming Metroid Ravenous. Now, an interesting consideration here is that Yoshio Sakamoto, like a lot of other Nintendo higher-ups that have been the executive producers or executive developers for some time for these different Nintendo IP, is getting up there in age, so this could be his final Metroid title. And so what's also going to be interesting to see about this project is if Sakamoto has had someone under his wing that can take on the reins of continuing the Metroid story. The 2D Metroid story, to be specific. Kensuke Tanabe, the Metroid Prime producer, is also retiring from the series, but it looks like Risa Tabata will be taking on the role of leading that series when Nintendo does decide to put out the next one, which, as I mentioned earlier, I do think Prime 5 is in development. Of course, we'll see, not confirmed, it's rumored. But it's going to be very interesting to consider what happens with these Metroid titles. If this is all true, this bodes extremely well for the Metroid series. There have been rumors of a Metroid movie in the works, and it may just be the case that Nintendo is not giving up on the Metroid IP. They're going to continue to push it, and we're going to see Metroid expand in popularity. Maybe there is even that movie, and that will certainly make for an even bigger difference as well. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.